you doing, Met fans? Welcome back to another edition of the Terry Collins Show, presented by Tunnel the Towers, supporting America's greatest heroes. Donate just $11 per month by going to t2t.org. That's T, the number 2t.org. I'm John Arezzi. The baseball playoffs begin this week, and fan bases of all the teams who made the postseason are gearing up for some exciting games across the country, including New York. But those are Yankee fans. But as we all know by now, the New York Mets are not there after what was perhaps the most historic collapse in Mets history. It was not like 2007, having a 7-game lead with 17 to play and missing out. Nor was it like 2008, when the Mets took it to the last day of the season in the final game ever at Shea Stadium. This year was a slow death. A team which had the best record in baseball on the morning of June 13th. 23 games over 500, a 5.5-game lead in the division to a team that finished at 83-79 for the season, going 38-55 in their last 93 games. No one, including this Mets fan that's been following this team since 1966, had seen anything like it. We're going to cover what it was like being around this team for the final week of the season. So this is kind of a two-part show. We have Laura Albanese going to be with us today, an insider, sharing her views and her eyewitness experiences behind the scenes covering the team. Next week, we'll have Terry Collins. We'll have Andy Martino. So we'll have a really good roundtable on a really deep dive into the season, but a great conversation ahead with Laura Albanese. And Terry Collins is going to join us later in the show with Howie Rose. And we're going to actually go over something that's going to give the fans a little bit of joy as Terry and Howie reminisce about a much happier time. And that was the 2015 postseason run of the then who became the National League champions. So that's a great segment. So please stay tuned for that. And as we begin the end, really, the end of the 2025 season for the New York Mets was historic in nature. So we are going to begin this episode with the end. And that is with Gary, Keith, and Ron, the broadcast television voices of the New York Mets, weighing in after the final out of the season by a Mets team that will go into the history books for all the wrong reasons.
It is unfathomable that this collection of talent winds up outside of an expanded playoff system after having the best record in baseball for the first 2.5 months of the season. Everything goes wrong over the last 3.5 months, and the Mets find themselves on the outside looking in.
Players are about as stunned as the fans. I think a lot of the players felt as though this day would never come, that they'd be able to turn it on at some point and not have to endure this. But they weren't able to do that.
Well, you got a Marlins team. Sorry, Ron. I didn't. That in 2007, 2008, we don't have to remind Met fans that have done this. They took 2 out of 3 here. The Mets took the series. They're in. They didn't do it. So the Marlins once again do the Mets in. And this has got to be just so heartbreaking and disappointing for the players. But they didn't get it done.
2007, 2008, 2025. The Mets get brilliant pitching in game number 161 to put themselves in position, but are unable to seal the deal in the final day of the season and fall to the Marlins, who knocked them out of the postseason yet again.
You were talking about the 21 games over 500. The Mets started where the first 2 months of the season, their starting pitching was the best in baseball. But through injuries and inconsistencies, they ended up being a starting pitching staff that could not get to the 5th inning, which led to an exhausted bullpen. their defense went in the tank in the second half, and you ended up with none of that working and a top-heavy lineup, and that's all you had left.
You know, Gary, they're gonna say the Met pitching, but you know what? It was a team effort here. Remember the first half of the year, the Mets did not hit in the clutch the whole first half of the season. All the wins and losses, they add up. You know, when you have the winning season, you put it all together, both offensively and defensively. The Mets pitching carried them in that first half, and then the Met offense kind of turned it on in the second half. But, you know, you got to look at their record from June on. Well under 500.
I'm watching the Marlins. They just took a team picture in front of their dugout like they're going to the postseason.
Oh, this was their World Series. They took 2 out of 3, knocked the Mets out of the postseason. You saw the Reds celebrating in Milwaukee. It seems almost impossible that the Mets could get the seasons they did from Soto and Alonso and Lindor and Nimmo and still fall short of this 12-team playoff system.
Many of the numbers historical for this franchise and for their own careers. It's just hard to believe that this day has come.
You know, we've always talked, it was a top-heavy lineup, Gary. And I found myself for the first time in the booth covering the Mets saying we got to flip the lineup to get to that big four, and that big four has to come through. You know, they have to do it. It didn't get done.
You got to a game 162 with a team like this, and you didn't even know who you wanted to pitch, who was going to pitch. That's what you end up with. A game 162 that you had to have. You didn't even know who you needed to pitch.
First time in Edwin Diaz's career that he threw the most innings for his team that day. He did his job 6 up and 6 down, but there was no offense, so it didn't really matter.
On today's leadoff, we welcome back to the Terry Collins Show, baseball insider, Newsday's New York Mets beat writer, SNY analyst, and eyewitness to the Mets' epic collapse this season, and especially this past week, Laura Albanese. Laura, welcome back.
Thank you. I did not expect to be in New York right now.
No, I mean, the last time you and I communicated, you were like, I think I can do it on Tuesday, but I'll be in LA, and depends what time the game starts.
That's baseball.
Well, there will be a game in Los Angeles tonight, but you won't be there. The Cincinnati Reds will be there.
Ridiculous. I have never personally experienced something like that. Obviously, I was watching baseball in 2007, 2008, but I wasn't covering baseball. So no, this is beyond anything that I expected.
And you were kind of a Mets fan back when you were younger, and of course now you cover baseball. You're the beat writer. But do you have recollections of those collapses? Did they mean anything to you back in 2007 or 8?
Not too much. I mean, I do have some recollection of it. I remember, 7-game lead with 17 to go, and the Marlins with the final dagger, and then the Marlins with the final dagger again, and then 2025 the Marlins with the final dagger.
Yeah,
but I do remember the Glavine game. Yes,
we will get into that. Just to go back all those years, I was of course there. I had season tickets in the Loge at Shea Stadium, first row by the left field foul pole. And my nephew, and it was horrific. And that last day, 2007 was horrific. 2008 was the final day of Shea Stadium. That was the last day. And of course, the Mets blew it by not having the ceremony before the game. They decided to have it after they were eliminated.
The world's saddest ceremony.
I didn't see it. I left.
Good for you.
My friends that were with me, like, where are you going? I said, I am getting out of here. I mean, I am not watching it. As much as I wanted to celebrate the history of Shea Stadium and all the pageantry, but it was kind of like the air went out of this balloon. And I'm like, I'm getting out of here. And I walked out of Shea Stadium for the last time, anger with this just disgust of what I just saw 2 seasons in a row. So that's the history of a lifelong Mets fan. Next year will be my 60th anniversary as a Mets fan. So I've seen a lot of it, but I can't and I won't and there's never been a season like 2025.
No, I mean, like obviously there's some recency bias, but I've been calling it possibly the most spectacular collapse in franchise history because just of the level of expectation going into the year. I mean, the Mets were the favorites to win the World Series. They have one of the favorites rather. They have a $340 million payroll. This was the year that Juan Soto was going to be here. It was the year everything was supposed to click. And it did click. Sometimes in ways that you didn't expect early in the season. Like you didn't expect the pitching to do what it did, the rotation to do what it did in the first half of the season. And then to see what happened from June 13th onward, especially with, they kept saying it, the talent on the roster. It was a slow motion car crash. I say it was surprise, but towards the end, it started feeling a little bit inevitable. It was like something that they could not stop. They could not stop the bleeding.
No, they couldn't. It was something like I've never seen before, and I've seen it all. And I know there's a lot of Met fans right now across this country, and what an attendance by Met fans in Florida this weekend.
Yeah.
We're all kind of experiencing, there's something called the 5 stages of grief, right? And after the debacle of this past weekend, I decided to take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did an engine search, Google search, and I had all of them. And so if you forgive me for a minute, I'm going to actually, for all the Met fans that are watching this, if you're experiencing all these different emotions, I have to tell you they're the 5 stages of grief. And it starts off with denial. And denial is the initial reaction, which is often shock and disbelief. You may feel that the news is not real and there have been a mistake, and the world may feel meaningless and overwhelming. So that's the first stage. The second stage is anger. As the denial wears off, the reality and pain of the loss resurface, and it can manifest as intense feelings of frustration. Then you go to the bargaining stage, which in this stage you might create if only, like in the Mets case, if only they won one additional game.
Yeah.
What if, such as promising to change behavior in exchange for a different outcome. Then there's depression, the quiet stage of grief where the full weight of sadness over a loss is felt. And then acceptance. The stage is not about being okay with what happened, but accepting the new reality of the loss. Your emotions may begin to stabilize, and you start to learn how to live with the new circumstances. So I went through all of it, and I went through it pretty much like shit through a goose, very fast.
I mean, you kind of have to at this point. I think you had so much time to prepare.
Well, only because I'm a lifelong Mets fan and I've seen it all,
Yeah.
And a team that hasn't won the World Series in 39 years, the collapses, the close calls. So I'm accustomed to it. Each year is kind of different. They take your heart out. They smash it up in a different way every year. So I'm very proud of myself that I'm now over it. I really am.
I mean, you did it fairly quickly. I'm proud of you too. Like you pulled through this in a way that the Mets did not. So.
Yeah, there's a new stage though, which I'm going to, maybe create something new. It's called humor.
Yes.
Because as we were ready to record this, the New York Mets sent their season ticket holders a thank you video. And I had a season ticket plan this year. I was a 20-game season ticket holder. I'd paid for my postseason tickets already. I've been a season ticket holder. Really, the first time was in 1983. But I had a premonition that this wasn't going to end nicely this year. And I was up there for that amazing alumni weekend, which I had such a fabulous time. But the day after, it was kind of like, you know what? I've invested enough in the team, and I don't think they're going to make it this year. And that's going to devalue tickets for next year, because if you do collapse, attendance in the following year is going to suffer. So I'm like, and even with a season ticket plan, I live in Nashville. I live outside Nashville, so I don't go to all the games that I buy. So I put them on the secondary market, and this year was all right. I didn't lose money on my tickets this year, but next year I wasn't going to take that risk, so I canceled them.
Yeah. No, and it makes sense. And it's funny because, last year owner Steve Cohen was like, we want the fans to come out. I think they were 17th or something in attendance, and they weren't happy with it. But I remember Brandon Nimmo talking to the fans, hey, please come out, come support us. And that team was so exciting. And then this year the fans did come out. And it had, they came out in droves. I think it was something like 3 million. And they all had to witness this. So it's kind of like you're going to have a little bit of buyer's remorse. You were asked to do this, you did it. And then the team that you did it for did not hold up its end of the bargain. No,
it certainly did not. And getting back to that video they just released, which is humorous to me, it was a 40-second music video with just fans at Citi Field. And it was called There's No Place Like Home. And the lyrics were, there's no place like home, a place of hope, and no place I'd rather be.
So well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you really want to appease your season ticket holders by thanking them for coming out and supporting the team with record numbers this year, why don't you take away the 30% increase in ticket prices for next year? Not across the board. There are a lot of people that have got different levels of increases, but an average of 30% on an increase for your season ticket holders for next year, with the season they just had this year, they need to, and Steve Cohen, if you want to appease the fans or you give them something back, say, you know what, everybody, that increase for next year, just forget about it.
It's very tone deaf. I mean, I've obviously, even though this is my first year as beat writer, I've been covering the Mets since 2015. So, and I am exposed to the fans a lot, and I don't recall them ever being quite this despondent, quite this level of just like almost like hopelessness.
Yeah.
Because I think, they had this idea of prosperity going into the season. So like when you have hope, it tends to cut more, I think, than when you go in being like, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen? And now we're seeing the reaction from these fans. And that video, especially, you had played it for me before we started. It was extremely tone deaf, 100%. Yeah. And I had mentioned to you before, it's like, there's no place like home. That's because you were 34 and 47 on the road. Like, come on, guys.
That is true. So it's just remarkable, and them being, as you said, tone deaf to that. It's, and the fans it was such an exciting atmosphere all season long, and what they've done to increase the fan experience by, the promotions and making it like a party.
Yeah.
Even with Lindor's song and everything else that the fans bought into and enjoyed and appreciated. And then the slow erosion of excellence that started on June the 12th. Something like I'd never seen before, and I couldn't believe it as it was happening. I was like, all right, they'll get better. Then it's just get in.
Right.
And anything can happen.
Yeah. Anything can happen, and it did.
Yeah. And who would have thought that, at the end of the season, you're relying on 3 pitchers with limited, no major league experience to save your pitching staff.
And I routinely felt so badly for Jonah Tong, who was put in such an untenable position.
Oh, my goodness.
And this is he's obviously extremely talented.
Yes.
I think he's going to be a fantastic pitcher. You can never predict these things, but I do see a lot of the elements there. But how can you expect a 22-year-old kid with 2 AAA games under his belt to come in and say, all right, take the ball against these major league hitters? Towards the end, it just felt like almost like a ritual sacrifice. It's like this, he needs more development. He's going to be good, but he needs more development.
I felt so bad for him in the post-game press conferences because he was getting emotional. I'm like, the kid's 22.
Yeah, it was just tough. I actually had asked Stearns yesterday if he thought something like this would hinder his development. He was pretty adamant that it wouldn't, that it would actually help. But I guess time will tell. He
wasn't ready, obviously, and I think he's got enormous potential, and like some of the other kids do, and you already got somebody that could be an ace with McLean. But Jonah, it was special to see him. Everyone was excited about him because you heard so much about the minors and the first start. with all the runs the Mets gave them, and it was fantastic. But then reality set in, and that was that. But anyway, we could talk about so many things, but I know. But as one of the members of the media who spent almost every day with this team during the season on the road, Mets beat writer for Newsday, covering the team from the inside. What are the feelings you have right now as an eyewitness? What was it like covering this team on the road during that final week of the season? What was it like for you?
I mean, I think towards the end, there was a level of disbelief. I do think that they somehow thought that they were going to pull this off. And so when you entered the visitors' clubhouse over at Lone Depot Park after that last game on Sunday, there was a little bit of shell shock, I think, especially since the day before, Clay Holmes had a nearly kind of heroic outing for them. Mm-hmm. I mean, the idea that he was pitching in relief, just a couple days prior on Wednesday, and then said, all right, give me the ball. And not only give me the ball, but he went 6 innings.
He did.
That is very impressive for what he was able to do. I mean, he put everything out there. And you see a guy like Francisco Alvarez be putting his body on the line. This kid has a broken finger in one hand and, a torn UCL in the other. And so there was like this idea that the team will figure it out. Obviously, all these pieces are going to come together. And then the Reds lose, which I think was also surprising because the Brewers manager, Pat Murphy, the day before in his press conference, essentially, he did not say the games don't matter. The Brewers had clinched everything that they could possibly clinch. There was no reason for them to put everything out there, maybe get somebody hurt or whatever, but they won. They still won. And this entire time, the Mets are like, well, we were in control of our own destiny, but we're not in control of our own destiny going to Sunday. Then they were, because the Reds lost, and they still couldn't pull it out. And I think a lot of it goes back to, I want to say it was the 6th inning with the bases loaded. And Pete Alonso hits the hardest ball any Met has hit all year.
I know.
115.9 miles per hour to the gap. And they had scouted him. They had scouted where he was, where his tendencies, because he even said, great job scouting me, because I thought that was 100% going to fall in. And the entire season changes if that happens. And I think once that happened, when that ball was caught, there was almost like this sense of a little bit of doom. All right, this is not our year.
Well, the photo of Lindor and Alonso, I mean, that's kind of that's an epic picture.
Yeah.
With Alonso and Lindor with his head on his chest. But when I saw him hit that ball, it kind of got out there so fast. I'd never seen a line drive hit as hard as that. And it kind of it kind of made a curve to the left. And I'm like, that ball is it's curving.
It's whatever the opposite of Angels in the outfield. It was like they were playing the Angels in the outfield. It was like things would just not fall in for the Mets. And I will say there are a lot of deficiencies on this team that became apparent over the course of the season. I'm not going to blame this season on bad luck. That being said, they did get a few tough breaks here and there.
They did. They did. But as the week unfolded, and you were talking about how this team was, but behind the scenes, did you sense any panic or urgency in the players in the clubhouse? Was their demeanor changing at all as the course of the week took place, or were they kind of the same? Like, everything's going to be good. We got a lot of talent here. We just got to go out and do our thing.
So it's funny because I would ask the players is there a sense of just are you guys pressing? Is there a sense of just kind of, how we talked about Juan Soto having the onus of the contract? Well, the team as a whole had the onus of all these high expectations. And so when I would ask them, they were like, no, absolutely not. You see that people are loose. I think I even asked Lindor this, no, we have the music on pregame. And while I certainly believe him, I don't think he was lying to me. There could have been maybe they were fooling themselves a little bit, because it did feel a little bit tense pregame. I do feel like there was 100% urgency. These guys, there's they don't have any fire. It wasn't that. It was more very businesslike in terms of, we have a job to do. Why can't we do it? And so, yeah, I do feel like, the clubhouse pregame was a little quieter than it generally was.
Right.
I do feel like there was a little bit of tension. And I think that manifested, like in some of the at-bats. You would see guys pressing a lot, when they would get into these early deficits. You would, they would take pitches that they could hit, and then there was swinging pitches because they would get behind the count that were pitchers' pitches. And you saw that over and over again with these quick outs that they would make, especially in the latter half of the game. So yeah, I do think that there was a tension there, again, a disbelief there. And they might have been going through the same 5 stages of grief that you did.
Maybe. But the thing that gets to me a little bit, and the last week of the season's unfolding, and I find myself watching out of market games, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati,
Right.
Arizona and Los Angeles, and I'm seeing the fire in the bellies of the Reds, the way they were playing and the way Arizona was playing, and even LA, who had already been it was like this fire and emotion. And then what topped it off for me was watching the Blue Jays get the clinch and seeing the camaraderie and the energy and the manager calling players out in the post game with reporter Hazel May, bringing them out, and just this extreme love, which the Mets had last year. This year was more subdued. It didn't show. Even though they would celebrate after a victory, it wasn't like this team was more or less corporate America in a lot of ways, the way they handled their business and going out there. And Soto would be like, what do you mean? Like Soto was just kind of like, there was no fire or it was just kind of like they were like going to work as a corporate businessman, making an enormous amount of money. But there was something missing. And when I saw the Blue Jays, and I got to know the Blue Jays really well when I was doing the podcast with John Gibbons for 2 seasons in 2022 and 2023, I got to know the team. I got to talk to the team, and I got to see this. And I was so happy for them. And I was like, what happened to our team? What happened to our energy and our love and our camaraderie and all those things that winning teams have? The spirit was not there. And that's what hurts me the most about the 2025 Mets.
I 100% see what you're saying. I would not put it at Soto's feet. Soto is just like a very understated guy. I think one of the big issues was, again, the expectation. And maybe not having some of the vibe guys around. I mean, Sean Manaea, or, whatever, he was a guy who like kind of brought the vibes up in the clubhouse. I don't know if that necessarily translates to wins, but it doesn't hurt when you're all kind of pulling in the same direction. One thing that Pete Alonso said is that, one of the reasons that we're here, the good teams that have been on that win, that go to the postseason, we patch up each other's deficiencies. And it seemed like when one side of the ball would suffer, then the other side of the ball would suffer as well. They were not working in tandem. Maybe they weren't gelling the way they should. And some of that, chicken or the egg, is it because they were getting in these big deficits really early on? But one thing is certain, the thing that helps vibes the most is winning. And I think this was just a really depressing time for the Mets because, again, they had all these expectations and they did not know why it wasn't working. And they tried to reclaim some of it, like they had the Chancla thing and like towards the middle, but you can't force that type of stuff. And I think last year, they don't want to talk about last year because that was its own creature, but it's also because this team kind of paled in comparison to last year's team.
It did. And I'm not putting anything on Soto, really, because Soto is a machine. Soto
he really is a machine.
He really is. And what he did this season, even though he may not had what they call magical Met moments and game-winning home runs and walk-offs, but he went out and did his business the way Juan Soto has done his business throughout his career. Methodical, one of the best eyes in baseball at the plate, and he performed. And then the running game, you put that into the mix this year. I mean,
yeah, I think he'll get his, because, for the first half of the season, everyone's like, where's the Soto shuffle? Where's that little bit of like, and I think we were starting to see it emerge, especially with what he did on the base paths. From what I gather, when he's playing baseball, Soto's like a little bit of a troll. Like he likes to troll the other team. And I think the base running was part of it. He liked to get into pitchers' heads. And now he was like, well, I can do that at the plate, but wait, I can do that on the base paths too. 38 stolen bases. He's not fast.
Yeah, he likes playing around, and whether it's with the umpire behind home plate or the catcher or the pitcher with the side eye and all the things that he does, he's very entertaining. He's actually, you can't take your eyes off of him no matter what he does, and that's going to bode well for the Mets over the length of this very big contract.
Yes, very big.
But at the end of the day, at the end of the season, you and the other members of the media have to go into this clubhouse with a team that was just eliminated, and that is never easy.
It was certainly something.
What was it like right after that game when you guys had to go in there and, all right, we got to talk to these people now? What was going on back there?
I mean, people were despondent. It was kind of a weird mix. The only person that I saw truly looking devastated, and that's not to say that the other players weren't devastated, because I can tell you a guy like Brandon Nimmo was extremely sad. Pete Alonso was extremely sad. But Francisco Lindor looked absolutely devastated. I think he really, he has made no secret of the fact, and not surprising, that he wants to win a World Series. He wants that in his legacy, and I think he 100% thought that this was going to be the year. And he had tears in his eyes. He was sitting there, and I think he puts a lot of the blame on himself. He said, I wasn't good enough. It was like, it's always like an I statement when it comes to failure. It's like, I wasn't good enough. I failed the team. Chum and I did the same thing. I failed. And so, one of my colleagues even asked him, the toe, it was interesting during that press conference. Obviously you can't see his feet, but the toe where he had a broken pinky is in a sock and his other foot is barefoot. And he's actually had covered his feet basically since he had broken that toe. I'm like, hey, did the toe end up affecting you? He's like, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. All that matters is that we didn't make it. So, that was, pretty sad to watch. Brandon Nimmo, obviously, he was just so utterly disappointed.
We actually have a few clips that we're going to play, but I also want to talk to you about Mendoza for a minute before we play the clips. We have clips of Alonso after the game and Nimmo. But what I noticed about Mendy, especially in the last 3 weeks of the season, it took a toll on him. I mean, he looked like he aged, and he was kind of like he didn't know what to do in a lot of ways. He's trying to manage a pitching staff and a bullpen that was an impossible task for any skipper.
Yeah.
So I felt for him.
Yeah. I the fans who were calling for his job, I felt that was extremely harsh. He was really not given much towards the end. Like you can only do what you can with the tools that you have. And when it came to managing that pitching staff, he was running out of tools. I mean, he threw Ryan Stanek in there because he had to. Yeah. I personally would not put Tyler Rogers in with men on base because he is a contact pitcher. He did find that move backfired. There are going to be a bunch of moves that a manager makes that backfires, but he was put in a tough spot.
Yeah, and
handle that.
The enormous pressure in that last game as well. I mean, with what he had to do to try to, and of course the offense did squat.
Right.
But
it didn't matter who they pitched.
Yeah, but Manaea coming out maybe a little early, but he was doing everything in his power to kind of like make the right moves, and you could tell that there's this sense of this like it was just despair in a lot of ways. Like, what else can I do?
Yep. To
keep this lid on this game, and then batter after batter after batter, other than Alonso hitting that double or the double that would have cleared the bases. That didn't happen. That was it. Ball game over, and then they rolled over, and there was nothing they can do to get it back, and that was the season.
Yep. You can criticize his bullpen decisions all you want, but you can't win a game 0-0. It's just
you cannot.
You got to score.
You cannot. But some interesting observations, and you were there in the back in the clubhouse, and we have some clips. And the first one I want to play is Pete Alonso. And I think we captured Marsh, most of his comments. And then, Laura, you brought up a subject that will be in here that somebody followed up on, and that gave us a lot of answers on what he's thinking about next year. So why don't we go to that Pete Alonso clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
What are your thoughts about your future with this franchise?
I mean, for me, like I mean, playing for this organization, the city, I mean, it's really, I mean, for me, they've continued to believe in me. And I mean, I've loved playing here. There's some great guys in this clubhouse. There's some great people in the staff. And I mean, every single day, it's just been a pleasure coming to work and putting on the orange and blue. So for me, it's, yeah, I mean, I've really appreciated and been nothing but full of gratitude every single day. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I've loved being a Met, so hopefully they've appreciated me the same.
Do you expect to opt out of your contract, Pete?
Yeah, yes.
Yep.
That was telling.
I mean, everyone knew that he was going to opt out. I actually really appreciate the honesty for the player option, but I mean, I think that was a very pointed comment. I've appreciated my time here. I hope they appreciate me. And we know what that means.
We do.
He took a team-friendly deal. Yeah, it was a big AAV, 2 years, $54 million, with that player opt-out. And yeah, he regressed defensively, but this was a very good offensive year for Pete Alonso. He's going to get paid. The question is by who?
Yeah, he made a statement this year, and I think there was a sense of disrespect in some ways from last season's negotiations. And, you know, how could you tell somebody, all right, your metrics and our analytics say that you're not going to age well?
Right.
I mean, how do you tell somebody that? Because that's so speculative. No matter who you are, you don't know the individual. You don't know what the makeup of a person is and how well he treats his body and how hard somebody works and how determined and that motivation and the God-given talent that this guy has. So when he says those comments, he's 100% justified by going after the biggest contract that he could get over the longest amount of years and go to the highest bidder. Now, if Steve Cohen wants to get involved again as much as he did last year to bring Pete back, even on a 2-year deal with a high AAV, I think that they need to do that for the franchise. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I know there are teams out there that now see the value of this guy. But that's the one thing that irritates me more than anything. When you can predict through your analytics that you're not going to age well, and you're a first baseman, and you're gonna erode. I mean, how do you? What is the justification of those types of analytics when you have to look at the individual and the makeup of that person to then evaluate them? And they had a chance this year evaluating Pete Alonso. He is an elite ball player with maybe not elite defensive skills, but he's not the most horrific first baseman I've ever seen. So he's going to get what he deserves, and it could be who knows where. But I hope that the Mets do come to their senses and give the fans this homegrown player, the home run leader of the franchise, who could break other records and could be the very first player in this franchise's history to hit 5 home runs as a Met.
Yeah. No, yeah. And you know, what's funny is that I had spoken to Pete earlier in the season, and he's keenly aware of the fact that he's getting older. Any ball player is keenly aware of the fact that he's getting older. And he was like, well, yeah, like I know that my physical talents might diminish, but I can compensate with that. And so he spent the offseason trying to find ways to compensate with that. And we saw him get better as a hit. We saw him get smarter as a hitter. Every game, post-game, he's sitting there with his notebook, taking notes about the game and what the pitchers did and what worked and what didn't, because he's trying to basically mitigate what age does to everybody for as long as he possibly can, because he wants to play through his age 40 season. 40. Yeah. And so, you know, like he is putting the time in. He is a very, very smart ball player. I know sometimes he can come off as a little bit goofy in interviews and things, but this is an intelligent ball player.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a super person.
Yeah, it's a very
off
nice
the
man.
field as well, and the work that he's done even with Tunnel of Towers. And I got to know him last year a little bit, filming some PSAs with him. It was just, he's a wonderful guy. And I think he's got a lot of great years ahead of him. And another question about him, which could be part of the discussion, not only from the New York Mets, but other teams as well, the DH factor. Do you think that is going to be kind of a prerequisite for any team that goes after Pete?
I think it might. Pete's defense was very good towards the first half of the season, just in terms of, while the metrics weren't there because he doesn't have great range, so his metrics are always going to be kind of not great. You saw him save a lot of throws from like when Mark Vientos was kind of trying to get acclimated at third base. You saw him make those picks, and I think that is a very strong part of his game that gets undervalued. That became, he made a lot of kind of mental errors toward the second half. It goes back to pressing some of those issues. So when I look at Pete, it's possible, I think it's likely, that any team that goes after him has to have him in their mind as a DH down the line.
Yeah. And I think he might be acceptable to that, depending on how big the contract is, how many years it's going to be. And there's a lot of factors that go into that as well.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously takes pride in his defense. He takes pride in playing first base, but there's only so much.
He always wanted to win a Gold Glove, didn't he? That's kind of one of the things that, regardless of all the other accomplishments he has gotten over the course of his career, that Gold Glove thing is something he's always wanted. Turning to Brandon Nimmo. Now, would you say Nimmo and Pete are pretty close?
I would say, I mean, yeah, they're I feel like they're fairly close, yeah.
Because Nimmo, and a question that you asked him in the after the game, final game of the season, we're going to play that, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Nimmo talking about Pete.
How do you feel about the fact that this might be the last game that you play with Pete?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I haven't quite dealt with that yet because I was trying to, I was hoping there'd be more. But I love Pete. Obviously, we got to see Pete at his absolute best this year, just absolutely destroying baseballs. You saw it again today. He's a game changer. And if that ball gets down, which it does like 99% of the time, what was it, like 115, 116, something like that. He just, I love playing with him, and I love the competitor that he is. So, I'm sure the Mets will be in contact with him this offseason a lot, but if it did happen to be my last one, I've enjoyed every second of it.
Yep.
Interesting statements there.
Yeah, like that to me, this is just my impression. A guy who maybe thinks that his friend is not going to be on the team next year. And I think that's, it is a very real possibility that Mets fans probably have to contend with. Frankly, last year, I thought it was kind of going to be a layup, and it wasn't. Not even close.
Yeah. Another comment that Pete made, which could have been a little bit of a indication, he said he wants to win.
Yeah.
He wants a World Series ring. He wants to sit. I think he said, "I want to sit on that throne." Is that something that he said during that?
Yeah, he said something. Or stand on top of the mountain,
on
or
that
something
perch
like that.
on top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And he wants to win. So I'm sure that will be another part of this. Of course, Steve Cohen wants to win.
Yes.
So here's the deal. With the Mets owner, Steve Cohen, he sends out an apology tweet, which I want to read, and then we'll talk about it. But it was an embarrassment for the Mets owner. So, Marsh, if you could pull up that post that Steve Cohen put out before the David Stearns press conference, and I will read that. Met fans everywhere, I owe you an apology. You did your part by showing up and supporting the team. We didn't do our part. We will do a post-mortem and figure out the obvious and less obvious reasons why this team didn't perform up to your and my expectations. We are all feeling raw emotions today. I know how much time and effort you have put into this team. The result was unacceptable. Your emotions tell me how much you care and continues to motivate the organization to do better. Thank you to the best fans in sports. that was, I thought that was really a good message, because here's the guy opened his enormous wealthy pocketbook up and invested so much money into this team. And he also made a statement when he took over the team that he wanted to win a world championship within the first 5 years, and those 5 years are now over.
Yes.
Can you see the failure of this season changing how he operates the team now moving forward? And could David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza's jobs both be on the hot seat in 2026?
Potentially in 2026. I certainly don't think anytime soon. Because like Steve Cohen courted David Stearns. He wanted David Stearns and he believes in him. So I think Stearns is going to get a very long leash here. And, I think maybe some of Stearns' moves didn't work, but he is willing to reevaluate some of his processes rather. So we'll see how far that takes him. Mendoza, that could be a little bit trickier. I think, he has a vote of confidence for next year, but already Stearns has said that they're going to reevaluate the coaching staff. So below Mendoza. So when suddenly, maybe your hitting coach or your pitching coach or your bench coach is on the line, that's usually kind of like the canary in the mine situation, where it's possible that, another one of these next year, Mendoza does not survive.
Yeah, the coaching situation when it comes to next season is going to be fluid.
Yes. So we'll see, because they have to kind of diagnose. One of the questions that I did ask Stearns yesterday, I was like, obviously you have all these fantastic hitters, but we saw time and time again, they would score runs in the first couple innings and then the offense would just go dead. And it was because opposing pitchers were making adjustments. Why weren't the hitters making similar adjustments? And so sometimes you look at that and like, is that a coaching and communication issue? Because why, you see a pitcher is doing something differently. Why can't you catch up?
Yeah, that coaching situation is really going to have to look at. You don't know who's going to stay, who's going to go, but the Mets in the past, years ago, Bobby Valentine had all of his coaches taken away from him one season, so it's not unusual for that to happen. It's just a matter of who stays, who goes. But I think there will be shakeups in the coaching staff, and we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But Cohen spent nearly $800 million this offseason. Just with signing Soto and bringing Alonso back.
Yeah.
$800 million. And one thing before we get to Stearns' press conference is like Stearns spent $144 million in the offseason. Sean Manaea, $75 million. Frankie Montas, $34 million. AJ Minter, $22 million. Jesse Winker, $8 million. Griffin Canning, $4 million. And the Marlins, as I said earlier, had a total payroll around $67 million.
Yeah.
So
Griffin Canning might have been the best one out of the bunch.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, that's a lot of money, $144 million. And all these guys were injured. And Montas came back for a starter. So, and then he was gone again. And Manaea certainly didn't look the same when he came back. But what a lot of wasted money. So I'm wondering if the Mets owner will now get a little bit more involved with his money when he allocates it to David and says maybe he's going to put a little bit of a tighter leash around Stearns for 2026.
It's certainly possible. I haven't heard anything either way.
But that's something that's so internal that is pure speculation.
Like, who knows? But it's like you're spending all this money, and Stearns has been very reticent, and he kind of sticks by this philosophy still that you don't want to shell out money on the free agent market for a frontline starter because pitchers get hurt. You could have taken that $144 million, thrown it part of it towards Max Fried, and had yourself a playoff team.
Yeah, absolutely. He could have done it. So that leads to Stearns and the press conference from Monday, and he did take full accountability for 2025 and the failures of the team and how it was constructed. What stood out to you most about Stearns' comments and the transparency he showed?
I mean, I think it was absolutely necessary. He took it upon himself. He's like, I am the architect of this team, and I failed. I think I understand the frustration of Mets fans, but I think acknowledging that failure is a very good sign because it indicates that he is going to reevaluate how he does things. He did stay, like I said before, he stood pat on kind of his pitching thing, but he said he would look at it, he would consider it. And then, it's what I thought was interesting and I had actually written an article about this maybe a week or so ago. The problem with the Mets was run prevention, which, is a fancy word for playing defense and pitching.
Right.
And the idea that they had all these contact heavy pitchers and then a defense that couldn't defend, it's a really bad combination. So I think, I agree with Stearns where you need to build a team holistically where the parts complement each other and not just, a second baseman that complements third baseman, but a type of defense that complements the type of pitchers you have. Like a frontline starter when you don't necessarily have the offense in the bottom half of your lineup, or a more balanced lineup, which I feel they did not have, and that led to rallies that weren't really extended. I think there needs to be a better balance in how they build that roster, and Stearns 100% mentioned that. So it'll be interesting to see if and how they pull that off.
Yeah. Well, fascinating discussion today, Laura, and we do want to invite you back next week because we'll have Terry here and get Andy Martino involved in a nice roundtable discussion on who stays, who goes, what can the speculative moves be as we all enter the hot stove league now, as if you're a Mets fan. So I want to thank you again for your time today, and please let everybody know where they can find you in print, on social media, and of course on television.
Sure. So you can find me on X at Albanese Laura, Instagram at Laura Writes Stuff. Where else am I? Newsday.com/Mets for all your Mets coverage. And I am an analyst on SNY, which now that my schedule is a little bit freed up, I'll be on more. And my podcast, First Time Listener, Long Time Caller.
Excellent. Always a pleasure to have you, Laura Albanese. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Really, there's only a handful of people that really cover the Mets like Laura Albanese does, and we really appreciate her sharing that inside story with us here on the show today. And she'll be back next week with TC and with Andy and maybe some other surprises. But we thank Laura once again for her time today. Well, we want to tell you about Tunnel to Towers and, of course, Terry Collins. One of the reasons he did not appear on this episode is he ran their 5K race, Tunnel to Towers 5K race in New York City for the second year in a row. And Terry will be talking about that experience when he rejoins us next week. But let's tell you about this fantastic week from Tunnel to Towers. This past weekend, Tunnel to Towers had its signature event, 24th annual New York City Tunnel to Towers 5K. 40,000 people were there who participated, who retraced the historic footsteps of New York City firefighter Stephen Siller. On 9/11/2001, Stephen ran through a closed Brooklyn Battery tunnel to respond to the terror attacks. He was killed at the World Trade Center, and the foundation was started in his memory. The run is an emotional tribute to Stephen and the other first responders who died that day. And you can learn more about Tunnel to Towers and its great work by going to T2T.org. And this is just one of dozens of Tunnel to Tower run walks this fall around the New York area, across the country. You could find a T2T 5K from the Jersey Shore to Bridgeport, Connecticut, to North Idaho, to Huntington Beach, California, and places in between. You could look for a foundation event near you. The money goes towards providing mortgage-free homes for the families of fallen first responders and service members with young children and catastrophically wounded vets. Check out the calendar at T2T.org. And there's another big event coming up in the New York area. Tunnel to Towers is hosting its Heroes Cup hockey tournament. October the 18th is the day for that. Teams from the FDNY, NYPD, Port Authority, Police, Coast Guard, and other law enforcement agencies will be mixing it up in a spirited game at the Ice Vault Arena in Wayne, New Jersey. There's a great atmosphere of competition and brotherhood. Proceeds from the event go to Tunnel to Towers. For more information, go to T2T.org. Once again, T2T.org. Well, 10 years ago this month, the Mets were embarking on a postseason which saw them capture the 2015 National League Championship. We will return with a look back with the manager of that team, our own Terry Collins, and the radio voice of the New York Mets, Howie Rose, and play some amazing highlights with them right after this word from our friends at Tunnel of Towers.
On Memorial Day, the Tunnel of Towers Foundation honored the heroes who have selflessly served our nation. Among those was Army Sergeant Major Daniel Hendricks. During a special pregame ceremony at Citi Field, Hendricks was surprised by a special announcement by the Tunnel of Towers Foundation.
Daniel is receiving the keys to his very own mortgage-free smart home.
For Sergeant Major Hendricks, the gift of an accessible home is truly life-changing, a powerful reminder of how we can honor those who have given so much for our freedom.
Mets fans, let's hear it one more time for Daniel Hendricks.
Go t2t.org for more information. Let's go Mets, and let's help Tunnel of Towers.
We're going to go back 10 years now, and this is 2015, and 10 years ago, we had a much better situation than the current team is experiencing. But it was an amazing year. The entire season we have reviewed here on the show throughout the season. Each month we go over a different month, and today we're going to talk about the two series that vaulted the Mets into the World Series, the Division and League Championship Series. And we have a great video to take a look at those two series, and we'll talk about that on the other side.
Looking at him as they close in on Terry's face, those eyes look a little moist. And for that 66-year-old baseball lifer, why not? He's earned it. Now the 0-2 pitch. Swung on and missed, strike three. Put it in the books. The New York Mets have won the 2015 National League Eastern Division Championship. And the Mets pile out of the dugout and come out of the bullpen and begin the celebration up the first baseline to the right of the mound. They're mobbing each other. They are on their way down the dugout steps into the clubhouse. And so to everyone in the Mets organization, from Fred Wilpon and Saul Katz and Jeff Wilpon to Sandy Alderson, the general manager, who put it all together with a classic remake right around the trade deadline, to Terry Collins and the coaching staff and everyone wearing a uniform as players for the New York Mets. Congratulations. The Mets have won the National League's Eastern Division Championship for 2015.
And he threw it right past Crawford for out number one. And he sets down the 21-year-old rookie. Kendrick will be on the move at first. There he goes. And Gonzalez goes down swinging. Tried to check his swing. He didn't think he went, obviously.
Well, he's arguing with the home plate umpire because Alan Porter called it. Nothing irks hitters more than the home plate umpire calling that.
And DeGrom strikes him out. All 6 outs have been by the K. He struck him out. And his Mets have a 1-0 lead here in the fourth. And he fooled Ethier for the first out. Struck out his first time, popped to short his second time, and strikes out to lead off the fifth. Tried to check. And that is a 1-2-3 inning for Jacob deGrom. And he got him swinging. He got him.
Through that spot and still a little bit left in his tank.
13 strikeouts for Jacob deGrom.
The pitch. Swinging a shot towards center. Base hit, David Wright. 2 runs are going to score. Granderson races to third. He's there. Mets 3 and the Dodgers nothing. David Wright pounds a fastball up the middle. And when he got to first base, he made a fist with his right hand. And it's like he was trying to knock out Rocky Balboa.
As we talked about earlier, Granderson really the only Met that has had any success against Anderson. One of 2 Mets that's even faced him more than once.
First pitch on the way, hit in the air, deep to center. Back goes Hernandez, it's over his head, and off the wall! In comes d'Arnaud, in comes Flores, here comes Lagares, he scores standing! a double, and 3 runs batted in for Curtis Granderson, and the Mets have come right back to take a 4-3 lead. It's built a little differently than old Shea was, but if this place was ever going to sway a little bit the way the old ballpark did, this would be the time.
Cespedes 2 out of 2 with a couple of runs scored. And that ball is absolutely scorched to left. 3-run shot. And the Mets have blown it open. Yoenis Cespedes. Oh my goodness. Down low, and Duda's going to check again with Cedarstrom. Make sure that is ball 4. They're at first and second.
You know, here's an interesting stat.
And look at Murphy taking third.
That's because of the shift. No one got over the third base. Everyone on the right side, no one guarding third base, and Murphy takes advantage of it.
How about this?
So it's a walk. Now he takes it. He takes a look at who's there.
And you see the third baseman is Justin Turner, who's still on the right side. Nobody over there to cover. Heads up by Murphy.
Murphy with a double, a single, and then it wasn't exactly his wild run to third. He was very much under control when Duda walked. Payoff pitch. Swing and a drive deep to right, down the line, and there it goes. Daniel Murphy, a home run, has given the Mets the lead here in the 6th inning. It is 3-2 New York. Murphy's third hit of the game, and Daniel Murphy is writing some kind of story. Whether this is his swan song as a Met or not, who knows? But he has just given the Mets the lead for the second time in this game.
Mets glory on Dodger Stadium turf.
And Familia, 1 strike away. You could hear the nervous murmur from the crowd and hear the heartbeats of Mets fans 3,000 miles away. The 0-2 pitch, swung on and missed, strike 3, put it in the books. The New York Mets are going to the National League Championship Series. Familia jumped on by Travis d'Arnaud. The Mets pour out of the dugout, pour out of the bullpen. They're mobbing each other at the pitcher's mound. The New York Mets have defeated the Dodgers in 5 games of the division series. They win game 5, 3-2.
You've heard it all along. We have a tough game. Something doesn't go right, and we bounce back. We've done it all year long, and tremendous heart. I mean, there's nothing else to say. These guys we got some young guys and some veteran guys. They've meshed together, and it's been a blast.
Greinke was pitching his heart out tonight.
He threw the ball really well.
You connected on the home run. What'd you see there?
Man, we went back and forth that whole at bat. He threw the ball so well. He's got such a great changeup. He locates so well, and I get 3-2 right there, and I finally get a heater kind of in the zone I've been looking in all night. It was the middle in, and I'm able to keep it fair.
Jacob deGrom, every bit the bulldog that Oral Hershiser was all those years ago, and Daniel Murphy has the game of his life with probably the most famous stolen base in Mets history, the catalytic agent, and later Murphy hit what proved to be the game-winning home run. The Mets and the Cubs in the National League Championship Series.
Yeah, I knew today was a big game, and I knew Greinke going over there would probably be a close game. And I knew from the first inning I didn't have my best stuff, but I was just trying to keep us in that game, and Murphy had some great base running and then the homer to put us ahead.
Very different experience for me. Just the confidence that Terry has in me to go out there and pitch that inning, especially with the lead, instills a lot of confidence in myself. Once I got out there, Travis met me at the mound, and first thing he said to me was just one pitch at a time. And that's all I was focused on, is being able to execute one pitch at a time.
Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets!
It's cold. This is awesome. This is what we played for. It was a tough series. We battled it out, and this is just awesome.
David, 9 years. This journey has taken 9 years to get back here to this point, to the NLCS.
It feels good.
It does, right?
It does. It feels great. To answer your question, it's we've waited a long time for this. This city, this fan base, this organization, and to be able to come out here with the Dodgers having home field advantage. We knew that we were going to have to face Kershaw and Greinke 4 out of those 5 games to win 2 of those. Spectacular performance. I can't be more proud of this team.
And it's 3-1 to d'Arnaud. Travis d'Arnaud hits it right off the casing of the home run apple. Way beyond the 408 mark in straightaway center for d'Arnaud, his second home run of the postseason, and the Mets have a 3-1 lead. Wow.
That ball was crushed.
The 1-2 pitch, breaking ball lifted in the air, deep to right, down the line, got a chance, might go. He did it! Home run! Unbelievable! Daniel Murphy does it again! He tucked it inside the foul pole down the right field line. Citi Field looks like it's going to come apart at the seams. Holy smokes! What's gotten into him? And Murphy takes a curtain call. That's what the fans wanted.
Well, we just talked about it. The ball that Murphy hooked foul was a cutter down and in. This one is a breaking ball, a slow curveball, and it's down and in. Murphy drops the head of the bat. He's able to keep this one fair by maybe a foot or 2, and it ends up in the seats.
A nightmare first inning for Jake Arrieta.
2-1 delivery. Swinging a high fly ball right center field. That ball going to the track. Are you kidding? Daniel Murphy, one more time, buries it into the bleachers in right center field. Stop, drop, and roll. Daniel Murphy, incredible. The Mets take the lead 2-1. And whatever the aliens did to Daniel Murphy when they invaded his body a couple weeks ago, Met fans say thank you. He had never before, Howie, homered in 3 games in a row. Only once had he done it 2 games in a row. This is now 5 games in a row.
Move on the 3-2 pitch to Duda. In the air to center field. Well hit. Fowler back. Home run, Lucas Duda. And it's a 3-0 New York lead in the first. 3 for 24 in the postseason without a home run. And what a spot he picked. The 1-1. In the air. Deep right center field. That ball is gone! Daniel Murphy has homered in 6 straight postseason games. Nobody's ever done it before. Who writes this stuff?
Ray Bradbury, science fiction. It's not really happening. Can't be.
And strike 3 called. They haven't been to the World Series since 2000, and the Mets are on their way back. At McFadden's, far from last call.
Of his team.
Can't see it.
First question. Does it seem like 10 years ago for both of you? TC first, then Howie.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's been a long time. You know, I still think about a lot of those situations, some of those games. But I also realize, I'm very realistic, John, and know it's been a long time. And, it rejuvenates me a little bit to look back and think I was a part of it. But I just think I was so excited, and I still am when I think about that series in LA, that the Game 5 in LA. I don't know if I've ever been more, in a bigger situation, and then to sweep the Cubs, who, by the way, kicked our butt all season long, and I've told the story, we clinched, when we beat the Cubs, it would have been my mother and father's 53rd wedding anniversary. So, and they had both passed by then, but, those kind of things, those are things that I'll remember forever.
It's interesting you bring up your parents, Terry, because you might remember this game, but just before the trade deadline and before everything turned around, Clayton Kershaw took about 2 hours in a game at Citi Field to, get rid of the Mets, pitched like a 3-hit shutout or something, barely broke a sweat. I don't know if you remember that game, but later that night, my mom passed. And it was not unexpected. It was just a matter of time. But interestingly, no sooner did she leave this earth than the Mets started to win. And, the trade deadline presented the new acquisitions with Cespedes and the rest of them. And it's so ironic that you think back to your parents and I think back to my mom as significant kind of players from afar, if you will, in that scenario. But when I think back to 2015, yeah, it does seem 10 years ago. It is time for more. But I can't stop thinking about two things. You talked about Game 5 in LA. I can't forget Murph thinking he was invisible, as you said, and taking that extra base on a walk, which is,
That's
you may
right.
never see that again.
Right.
And when you brought Noah out of the bullpen, in what was that, seventh or eighth inning? I forget. I think it was the
Seventh inning.
seventh.
Yep.
And
Seventh
then,
inning. Yep.
um, and the gas that he threw, and you just got the feeling this is over. You get to that point. This kid's coming out and doing what he did. You got Familia ready. This thing was over. But it all kind of came together in part. Never mind Murph's home run, but just the thought of him tiptoeing around the bases after a walk. One guy could have probably pulled that one off, and it was Daniel Murphy.
That was the only guy I know could have done it.
Murphy's performance will go down in history. How did it feel like, Terry, you knew Daniel, you managed him for a few years, and then all of a sudden he turns into this guy that was reminiscent of Ted Williams or Babe Ruth or whatever else. He just didn't stop. So, Terry, on your perspective, and then Howie's, how was it like to see Daniel Murphy turn into Superman during that postseason?
Well, first of all, I love Murph. I've told you the story. When I first met Daniel Murphy when I was the field coordinator, and he had torn his knee up the last day of spring training. So he spent all summer down here in Port St. Lucie. And I when I was in town, I would go out, and he was there every day watching those young kids play, the rookies, every day. Every night he'd go to, when the St. Lucie team was home, he sat in the stands behind home plate, talk the game. He's a baseball guy. And so when our hitting guys, when Kevin Long and Pat Ressler went to him and said, Murph, you got to get the ball off the ground. You got to start swinging at strikes because you do big damage. Dan Murphy did it because he's a baseball player. He said, if that's what I need to do, that's what I'm going to do. And I give those coaches were great, but you got to buy into it as a player. And Dan Murphy bought into it because he's a baseball player. And that's, and he had to finish it. And believe me, we went in Chicago and he kept hitting home runs, and everybody on the bench just kept shaking their head like, who is this guy? All knew he could hit, but for this kind of power. But you know what? It's because Dan said, I'm going to make the change, and I'm going to make it now. I'm not going to, he didn't argue about it. He said, this is what's going to make me a better player. I'm going to make the change. And that's who he is.
Yeah, and the calls that you made, Howie, of Daniel are some of my favorites when you look back at these highlight reels, and everyone just couldn't believe it, how he just turned this light switch on and kept going. And the other person I want to bring up to both of you, because it really was a special series, a special postseason for him to be able to come back and be in it was David Wright. So your thoughts about David and that opportunity to be in that postseason?
Yeah, well, for me, John, it started when he came back in Philly on September 1st. I mean, that's where it started for me. I knew David was a great player, and I watched him be a great player, and I knew what he meant to be around us. Not just be in the lineup, but to be around the guys, because everybody respected him so much and what he meant to the team, just his presence. And I was very, very comfortable. I had absolutely no reservations at all about putting his name in that lineup, even though he had just been back for a month, heading into the postseason, because he's David Wright. And stars rise to the occasion, and as we expected, he rose to the occasion, and we all admire him and respect him for what he is today.
Something, John, one of the happiest moments that I've had in my entire career broadcasting Mets games was when David hit that home run in his first at bat in Philadelphia when he came back from being out for about 4 months because of the spinal stenosis. We get on the bus after the game, and David was sitting right behind me. And I've known him since the day he came up, so I've always had a great relationship with David. So I didn't feel like I was letting my guard down by saying, "Hey, I got to tell you something." I said, I can probably count on the fingers of one hand the number of times that I have felt goosebumps as I was making a call. And that's how I felt when you hit that home run. And I know he was deeply appreciative of that, but no more so than I was to have been privileged to call that moment, because it was as much about the person, David Wright, as it was the player returning from the injury and hitting that home run. It was a unique moment because of how fond everybody who's ever been around David was and is about him. And I'll always remember that just as one of the most special thrills I've had in my career, that one moment.
Well, I mean, you've called so many, and you've seen so much history of the New York Mets. Out of all the seasons that you have been associated with the ball club, where does the 2015 season rank for you as a broadcaster?
Well, as a broadcaster, you have to understand that I grew up in Bayside, Queens as a big Mets fan. And, we'd be playing stickball or punch ball or softball or whatever. And, I always wanted, if it was just a one-on-one kind of thing, playing stickball or a team game, I wanted to be the Mets, or I wanted my team that I was playing for to be the Mets. And, you're playing in the schoolyard and you think it's a big game. You might say something like, the Mets win the pennant if you win that game. Well, let me tell you something. To have been able to deliver those words into a live microphone as a broadcaster for the New York Mets when Jarius Familia struck out Dexter Fowler, and to be able to say the Mets win the pennant, well, that was another one of those goosebump moments. And there very few can compare in my career with that. As those words were coming out of my mouth, I almost had to squeeze my hand against my legs so I didn't cry or get emotional. It meant that much, but I'm still holding out for one more, even more emotional call,
Yeah, there's always hope, and those moments were very magical and special. And Howie, I really appreciate you coming on to reminisce with us about 2015, and always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Great seeing both of you, as always.
Yeah, well, you're the best, pal. Thank you very much.
Thanks, TC. We'll see you soon. You got it. I may need some golf tips, though. You may have to help me. I don't know if I'm salvageable, but I'm willing to listen.
You are.
I'm willing to listen.
Excellent. Thank you. A great look back at the postseason in 2015. We will have a look back at the 2015 World Series on our next episode. And now it's time for another weekly Tunnel of Towers feature highlighting a hero or celebrity and their T2T story. Today, we feature golf legend Gary Player. Let's go to that right now.
Hi, I'm Gary Player. I'm a professional golfer. I've won 165 tournaments, and I'm one of 5 golfers to achieve a Grand Slam career victory. But what means more to me than all of this is my ability to give back and do good, particularly to the United States of America. That's why I'm committed to helping Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Good to see you, Frank. Good to see you, Gary. How you doing?
You're one of the most successful golfers that ever played the game. You're an incredible human being, but you joined the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. You see the work we're doing, and you wanted to help us raise money because how much you love America.
And I'll never forget one of the days I went for you in Miami. This lady was on duty with her husband and the police. She heard that her husband had just been killed. Now she's got 2 children. What's the first thought that comes to your mind? How am I going to support these children? How am I going to give them an education? How am I going to give them a normal life? What am I going to do with my mortgage? Tunnel to Towers is right there, across the board. I mean, what you do is fantastic.
Because you know the sacrifice that was made for our country to give us this beautiful country.
I doubt if there's anybody that loves the country more than I do. And I have said gratitude for what this country has not only done for me, but what it's done for the world.
And as a foundation, we're there to help these families after they lose their loved one and they have young families left behind. And I know you're here to join us on that.
Tunnel to Towers is working every day to support America's greatest heroes. Please donate $11 a month at t2t.org. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Let us do good.
I want to let everybody know about next week's show. We will have a roundtable discussion with Terry Collins and the Mets insiders to go deep inside this epic collapse on the team in 2025 and take a look ahead to the offseason of 2026. Who stays, who goes, and how can Steve Cohen and David Stearns rebuild the trust and faith of a very jaded fan base? We want to remind you to check out Amazing Conversations with Jay Horowitz, a New York Mets podcast, hosted by the foremost Mets historian. Each week, Jay brings on guests from all eras in Mets history. Conversations with Jay Horowitz is available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. And you can subscribe to the Terry Collins Show on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. Just hit subscribe on the platform of your choice. And for our YouTube viewers, our entire archives of the past 2 seasons are available, including full episodes, interviews, and highlights from each show you could check out. Just go to youtube.com/The Terry Collins Show. That'll wrap up this edition. Thanks to our creative director, Marsh, and to our researcher, Dominic DiBiase. For Terry Collins, this is John Arezzi. We'll see you next time.